Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Are you somebody who wants to help out the autism community? Well, my next guest did just that. She started a cleaning business and hired those who are autistic. And now she's taken that company and she's offering it in a box form to those who want to do the same thing. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage and let's learn more about her. See you there.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with Janet Schultz. Welcome to the show, Janet.
Thank you, Reed. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a grandmother. I live in North Carolina. I have two adult daughters. I'm a special education teacher and an entrepreneur. I have two cats.
Now, you run a cleaning company that hires autistics. How did you get into that?
Well, I currently do not have that company. I sold that company in
Okay.
2021. I started it in 2012. What I do now is help other people do what I did and start in a cleaning company that predominantly employs people with autism. But in 2012, I found myself in a position where I needed to get back into the workforce. And having had a taste of being in the small business world and an entrepreneur, I knew that I could not go inside the classroom anymore, that I would be like a bird in a cage. I found through that experience, I found some things that I was good at, and I was in my zone when I was um, doing
Mm.
sales and marketing and just being an owner of a small business. That's who I am. And
Now,
so, yeah.
go on.
No, and then just taken from my experiences when I was a single mom and teaching school, I would clean houses on the side, and
Mm.
I'm very good at that, but I don't like to clean, but I'm good at it. That, but I do like having a small business. So I'm thinking, what kind of business, could I start? And granted, I was in trauma at the time, and I don't recommend that for anyone, but that is part of my story.
All right, so
So I
now, go on.
so I started a cleaning company and small office cleaning, Reed, because that fit my personality. Um, in that I prefer smaller hardware stores over large stores like Lowe's and Home Depot. Um, I prefer to go to a small community grocery store over a huge Walmart supermarket. That's just my personality. So I wanted to do something that was manageable. And, in my research, I realized that it was important to find a niche uh, in the cleaning world, something that businesses were looking for and was lacking for them was to have a cleaning company that would entertain cleaning a dentist's office, a
Mhm.
lawyer's office, a small dance studio. Churches are good clients for us. So we started doing that and gaining clients, and I started doing residential too, but that proved later down the road not to be a good idea. I sold my client base for my residential because when I started hiring people with autism, that didn't fit for them. There was
Mm.
not enough of the same thing. Too many knickknacks, too many, could get distracted with.
Mm.
So commercial cleaning, small office, that was our niche. That was our thing. And businesses had a need. We met a need for them too. Now, I grew very fast because people in our community and my friends, they rallied around me during this time in my life, and I could no longer do the work myself, Reed. So
Mhm.
I started, having to hire people. And so I hired people, brought them on, and I was already back then in the beginning writing things down. We clean to a process. This is how you clean a sink. This is how you clean a toilet. This is how you clean a desk. And I found people came with an attitude, that they already knew how to clean. And so they didn't want to follow my process,
Hmm.
or they weren't dependable. They were on their phones at the same time they were cleaning. It's just not what I was looking for. And so it was very frustrating, very frustrating. And I just cried out
Hmm.
one day. I remember that. Just, where are my employees? Literally, where are they? And it just came. You need to look at people with autism. They would be a good fit. Well, why? So I didn't just jump off the wagon and start doing that. I researched and found that, in the educational career, I seemed to get them and they got me. We just kind of gravitated towards each other, people on the spectrum. And so I realized that they were, yes, detail driven. That was me. Um, they thrive on a routine. They get better with time. They don't get bored easily with that routine. They're dependable. For the most part, they have a strong work ethic. They're reliable and they take instruction. If I were to give them a list on how to clean, they would actually follow it without any attitude. So they became the perfect fit for what I was looking for in an employee. You see, I was thinking about this. This is very important. When I started hiring people with autism, it's not about just giving people with autism a job. People with autism they had qualities that I was looking for that were very attractive to me and that fit very well into the business that I had. So that's why I started looking at them, because they were at high demand as far as I was concerned. And at the same time, I was meeting their need because they didn't have a job and were finding it difficult to get a job or maintain one.
You were probably making the parents very happy knowing that there was somebody out there who is willing to hire their child, their son or daughter, and give them a chance.
Right. And give them a chance, I did. Now, not everybody passed the interview process.
Oh.
They either, weren't ready behaviorally or socially,
Hmm.
you know, um, or the parents sometimes were not ready to
Oh.
let go of that adult child
Hmm.
and allow me or trust me
Hmm.
that I wasn't trying to take advantage of them. Because,
Interesting.
yeah, because, they're so used to naturally having to protect, feeling like they have to protect their child from others so they won't get taken advantage of. But what we tried to do is to teach them, because once a teacher, always a teacher, Reed.
Yep.
And my classroom became Blue Jay. So we would teach self-advocacy, and when parents weren't ready to let go and realize that I didn't hire them, I hired their son, and their son is the one that needs to communicate directly to me. I communicate directly to him. We're the ones, he gets his schedule. We communicate. You're over here. You're not involved unless he wants to tell you about it. And so that was, some families just weren't ready for that, to let go of that. So so they had to go through the job shadowing, um and if they passed, if I saw that they were mature enough and they worked well with a team, they took instruction well, then they would be on a probationary period, 30 days, um, until they were officially hired. and they generally got better than minimum wage.
That's
And
good.
that's more than one can say
Yeah,
for these workshops out there that kid are you I don't know where you live, Reed.
I'm in Chicago.
You're in Chicago. So around here we got sheltered workshops, they call them, but they're a different name now, I think. But they have their place in the day. You know, our society, we've outgrown those as a
Mm.
society. Those people, those individuals, they don't get minimum wage. They get a stipend for the work they do. I'm not looking for cheap labor. You know, that's not what they were attracted. I sought them out. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And and I wasn't just hiring people to give them a job. I don't coddle. The bar is here and they know that and they exceed it every time. I
No.
expect that they can before they until they prove me they can't.
Now, obviously, you have a condition on the level of autism. Am I correct when you hired your kids? I mean, you're not going to hire a level three who needs a hell of a lot more support, where a level one needs almost no support.
Okay, good point. I'm glad you brought that up. One of the qualifications to even apply
Hmm.
would be that you would have to be independent worker,
Mm,
or or now this is a clincher, or be able to become one.
mm,
Because this is the problem that I found, and these are my experiences, is that we teach our young people in school, in the system, to be cue dependent and not thinking for themselves. They're used to having someone tell them the next step.
mm.
This is all right, they do step one, and they, instead of thinking for themselves, they wait for that cue. Well,
Okay.
we don't have cues.
No, I mean, I remember that from my younger days when I used to work. It's like when I would work for retail, it would be like I'd always wait to see what my manager told me to do next. And I remember him saying, "You don't always need to tell me to tell you what to do next. You need to think on your own and think, okay, I've done this. What else needs to be done?"
You're exactly right. And listen, Reed, employers are looking for that. They don't want somebody that they hire that they have to hold their hand and to tell them what to do next. So I found in my experience, which is all I can speak to, is that a parent or job coach or someone like that would say, well, they're not able to work on their own. Nope, I don't believe you. I believe that they haven't been given the chance. And so I would not allow job coaches on my job site
Mm,
because that did not jive or align with my philosophy. And my philosophy is independence. Whatever that looks like, that is what I want for you. And given the chance and opportunity. So I wouldn't even allow that. And I pretty much tell, um, so I'm not going to sell anybody short. They got to show me that they are not capable of working on being given instruction and working on their own. Now, people that needed a little bit of extra help, then you would be with a team.
mm,
You would be with a strong team. But yet that team can't carry you. You know, you got to
yeah.
be you they can't carry you. So, um you know, it just they just grew so much. Their
Mm,
communication skills went through the roof. These are testimonials from family members as a result of having been given the opportunity and an environment in which to thrive. And expectations. I
mhm.
expected something of them, Reed. I expected something of them. And they reached that expectation. And it wasn't an unrealistic one. Now, if I found that it was, then we both made a mistake.
Hmm.
And we both fail. We both learn from that, but it certainly wasn't a dirty word to fail.
No, failures, people, parents and kids alike need to learn failure isn't a bad word. Failure
Right.
is a learned experience.
Yeah.
You don't learn anything. You learn from your failure and you move on and you improve.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
You have to make it count for something. It's a choice.
I mean, no, you said something very profound that kind of stuck to me from an experience I had going through kind of like a disability training, job training center. I had I'm not sure what you'd call him, but he literally went with me to my job interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt so embarrassed.
Yeah.
Then he checked up on me on my work, and I even felt more embarrassed. I'm like, I'm not a child. I'm not some invalid that you need to speak for me. I can do my own thing.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. They're called job coaches.
Yeah.
And I could go on a soapbox and I can go off on that because I don't agree with that at all.
I
They
don't think,
wanted they wanted to come to the interviews, but I wouldn't allow it.
I think
I said,
more
no.
companies need to say no and stop the job coach from coming in with the client
Well,
because we're not interviewing you and you're not answering the questions for them. You are interviewing the child or the adult.
right, right, exactly. I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. And they come in, these job coaches, they come in with almost an intimidation,
Yeah.
you know, and that's not right. That's just
No.
not right. And the employer kind of feels that.
Hmm.
And I think that that should just be removed. And parents need to be able to, and I don't know how we accomplish this, but need to let go and trust.
Oh yeah.
Trust that I'm not going to take advantage of your child. You trust that Amazon or trust a company.
Mm.
Trust, that your child, you're teaching them and they're learning self-advocacy skills that they can start speaking up for themselves.
I
But this
mean,
going
yeah.
into the
Mhm.
workplace and it just it's just not anything that I agree with whatsoever. It defeats all that I'm about.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of the fact that parents, like you said, need to trust their child. They need to trust them to let them go out. And it reminds me of a comment I got on my show early on. A kid had emailed me about himself and his sister, and he said his sister is autistic, but his father and the family aren't letting her outside. They are too afraid of what the world will do. And I'm like, he's like, I'm gonna tell my parents, my father and my family, that maybe they should let her outside and see the world.
Right, that's a shame. And it's fear. They're afraid. They're afraid. You can't fault them. But they need to see that there is another side
Yeah, they
and
do.
another perspective.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, and it is fair because they don't know what the world's gonna do, and they don't know what the world's is all about, and it's because of the society we live in. We are in such a negative society where we dwell on the negative and every little negative thing builds up and the family sees all this and they don't want their child to experience it, so they put them in a bubble.
Right. And that's part of too what I try to accomplish with Blue Jay is bringing awareness to people in the community and our clients who we work for. When you meet a person with autism, you've met one person
Yes.
because we're, all different. And so it was dispelling a lot of stereotypes, and I told my guys on the spectrum, I said, look, and I held them to probably I was rougher on them than I was anyone. because I said, look, you are on display. People are watching you, and you may be the first person that they've met with autism. And you need to show them, what you're all about and dispel some of the myths out there. I was very honest and open with them. They were very much self-aware that they were autistic. We didn't, you have to be comfortable in that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing is if you can show a company that, hey, look, I'm autistic and look what I did for your company. I cleaned your bathrooms, I cleaned your store from top to bottom and I did it in such a way that you're proud of it. That shows that company, hey, I'll go back to you and use you again and again
That's right.
and again.
Mm-hmm.
But not only does it look good on the company, it looks good on the child because it gives them
Exactly.
a sense of accomplishment. It's that aha moment of, I did this, I'm proud of this, and I'm showing the world, hey, I'm not less, I'm different. I may think differently than everyone else, but I'm 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 I can do anything you can do.
Well said. Well said.
Now, what are some of your biggest fears and doubts you had when you started out? I mean, how did you push these kids through? How did you get them to say, hey, take a chance with me?
They wanted a job. They sought me out.
Hmm,
And so when they sought me out, because um, once I decided that I was going to start hiring people with autism, the word got out.
that's good.
We were featured on Super Bowl Sunday one year on the local news. They did a big piece on us. Newspapers in our area, Charlotte and a nearby town, they did a piece on us. So we had a reputation. And so they came to me, and some of them came with job coaches.
No.
Okay. And so that was hard, Reed. I was accused of taking advantage. Um,
Oh
I
God.
was I was intimidated, like, why can't we come on site? And because I was a business and not a not I wasn't I didn't have to. I didn't have to let you on my job site. And so I
Mhm.
had to stand my ground. And I went through a lot of struggles with that in the beginning. But once they realized I wasn't playing around, you know, my guys they came and they interviewed by themselves. No, we do our own job on the job training. We
That's good.
don't need I don't need your services. We do our own on the job training. So I just wouldn't let them come on site. So when they went through the job shadowing and they got their first job, because all of them that have gone through Blue Jay, this is their very first job. And so it's in a safe environment. They were thrilled. Adam, I think I've learned about Adam through his brother who went to my church. Adam's brother would come home from work, and Adam, he's on the spectrum, and he would say, I wish I had somewhere to go to work. And Adam once he became an employee, he grew into a team leader. He gained confidence enough to get his license to drive, and he drove team members around. Now, Adam springboarded a few years ago into Federal Express, which was his dream job. I knew that he wasn't going to stay with Blue Jay forever. He had aspirations, desires for himself. But he built his resume, he got confidence, he knew what it was like. He got his license now, and it was hard for him to give me his notice, you know, and it was hard for me to take it because that was a loss. You see, they're a loss when they move on. Once they got a job with me as their entry level and they move on, that's a loss for me.
Yeah, because
And
then
they're
you
hard
got
to
to hire you.
replace. Yeah, it's hard to replace them. And so, does that answer your question? They sought me.
Mhm.
They wanted a job. They had motivation.
Now, how is your hiring process different than the traditional companies? Or is it?
Well, I think that it is. I promote job shadowing as interview process rather than a sit across from each other talking kind of thing.
Mm.
Because in a job shadowing, they shadow me or they shadow another team member, and they actually get involved in the cleaning. And it tells me a lot. I usually know the first job shadowing whether or not they're cut out for it or not, whether or not they're socially or behaviorally able, because some aren't mature enough right out of high school to handle a job. It might take into their mid-20s or early 20s to be able to do that. And they just would, I'd give them instruction and I would just note how well they follow through with that instruction, how well they mesh with team members. And big one for me is taking initiative.
Hmm. That
Don't
is.
wait for someone to tell you what to do. If you see something that needs to be done, take initiative. That is something big for me that I look for. And if you show that and didn't wait for someone that was you're hired. So
Now, what do you wish more business owners would understand about hiring autistic talent?
understand that you can communicate with them and find out what works best for them. If they're not, if you communicate with your employees a certain way, be willing to think with well, maybe I need to think about another way to communicate with this person on the spectrum. Maybe they'll do better with texting over email or phone call or memo. It's about them being able to get some input from that employee on how best to be able to provide them an environment in which they can be the best employee for that employer, because that employee wants to do a great job. And
Yeah.
to be very specific and detailed, lay out the absolute job description verbatim. Don't expect them to read between the lines, and you're not going to have trouble with them being on their phones or talking around the water cooler, because they're there hyper focused. They're there to do a job, and they're not going to get distracted, with these other things. They're there to do a job.
Now, can you give me an example of accommodations you've offered that have made a big impact on them?
Uh, Doing texting and giving texting short messages rather than a whole slew of messages because
Hmm.
it all gets lost in there. That's one. Providing transportation.
Hmm.
A lot of them don't have their license, and not all family members can take them to work. Now they could get a taxi, they could get a bus. So that's not something the employer should provide. Now, the employer could provide resources that the employee could utilize, and then that I think that would be helpful.
Now, what kind of
Accommodations. I think one thing that we did in the cleaning company, uh, sometimes it would take Michael, for example, almost twice as long to do a cleaning job if he was doing it by himself than it would for me, and he would be given more time. That doesn't mean he gets paid more, because every job paid a certain amount. And I would always quote the job, the amount of time that it would take me. And I'm not the fastest cleaner. So I knew that it could be done within that time frame with ease. Michael understood that it takes him longer because he is so detailed and he gets lost in the details, especially if he's by himself. Now, if he's with a team member, we would know to go and say, Michael, you need to hurry up. You've already cleaned that toilet enough. It's very clean. So let's move on. Those kind of prompts. Does
That's
that make sense?
that makes sense. I mean, that kind of reminds me of my best friend. He he's not sure if he's autistic, but he works housekeeping and at different places he's worked. And he worked on a cruise ship, and they loved him because he was so thorough in his cleaning that they didn't want to lose him.
Right, exactly. You're exactly right. Is he still there?
No, he left the cruise ship. He's now working for Bally's Casino doing the same thing, house cleaning, and he loves it.
That's a great story.
It
You
is.
know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I keep telling him. He said, "Oh, I got tested, but they didn't see autism in me." I'm like, "Well, they missed out on something because you're definitely autistic if you're that detail oriented when it comes to cleaning."
Hmm. Yeah. And there's no shame in the job.
No.
No, there's no shame. And absolutely, because you can start out cleaning, then you could move up to team leader. And you can, who knows, you can be the owner of the company. You can manage. You can do some aspect of the bookkeeping.
Now, what kind of job responsibilities have you found that align really well with the autistic strengths?
In the Blue Jay cleaning business,
Yeah.
and they, there was a fit for every job task that we had. From, I had, I had Joe was on he had Asperger's, and he would do my bookkeeping. Joe would do a lot of my blog. He would blog for us. And I would give him some of those kind of responsibilities, delegate. I don't have any trouble delegating. And then you have the others that would uh, do be on the team and would be responsible for jobs on their own, and then jobs that they would be involved with as a team. So every single job that is required in order for Blue Jay to function, a person with autism have their hand on it.
Hmm.
Joe would even go with me to events. Um, and he would be there to help me during the events, explain what Blue Jay was all about and what have you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that really does. Now, can
Yeah.
you share a story that really stands out, something that made you think this is why you do what you do?
Yeah. Besides telling you about the guys that are now working in the real world
Hmm.
and are successful, I do have Eric, which was my first hire. Eric was my first one that I hired that was autistic in 2012. And Eric was the one that they wanted, that he had a job coach and that they said couldn't work independently. So you know how I feel about that now. I've already
Hmm.
shared all that. Well, Eric's mother, he lived with his mother, and she oftentimes would take him to and from work. Sometimes I would pick Eric up, but I tried not to carry that responsibility. You're supposed to get to work. That's your
Hmm.
responsibility. And but for times that he couldn't, and I would ask for him to pay me gas because I think that is teaching him responsibility.
Yeah.
And so one day, I don't know, Eric had a job, and I just assumed Eric had a ride because he didn't talk to me about getting a ride to his job. Well, somehow I found out Eric was on site and he was working, and it came up, and I asked Eric, I said, Eric, how did you get to work today? And he said, I took the bus.
Wow.
I said, Eric, how did you know which bus to take and what route? He said, I looked it up on the computer. So Eric, to everyone's surprise, knew he had a job, knew it was his responsibility to get to work, and knew he had to figure out how he was going to do it. He problem solved on his own. He didn't call his job coach or anybody like that. He processed all this on his own. He looked up the bus route where, and he had to make some changes along the way on how to get from his job to the job site. And granted, he had to take the vacuum cleaner with him because he had the vacuum cleaner. So Eric gets on the bus with a vacuum cleaner and gets to his job on time. Now, that to me is a success story. To me, that's inspiring. Someone that they didn't think had it in him. Eric was a team leader. He was the keeper of the keys, and he took that very seriously.
Mhm.
No one got those keys from Eric. No one. And Eric had to leave, and that was the saddest day of my life because I depended on Eric. When Eric was on the job, I didn't worry. I knew it was going to be done right. But his mother died, passed away
Oh
from
God.
cancer, and he had to move to South Carolina, neighboring state, to live with his sister.
Mm.
But Eric was with me 2 or 3 years.
That's sad, but happy
I
at
don't
the.
know, yeah. I don't know what Eric's doing today. I did go visit him once, but you know what I heard, which really made that all Eric's doing is sitting in his room playing video games.
Oh,
So that to me is a waste.
it
So,
tells me that the sister's not doing anything for him,
right, right,
not pushing him out to look for work. Either
right,
he's just not able to find a job that's willing to hire someone who's autistic.
right. And Eric would make a wonderful employee. I would be his reference. I've been references for others. So it's been a few years since I've been in touch with Eric. I hope he's doing well.
Now, what kind of feedback do you get from your autistic employees about their experience working for you?
From them, I've gotten nothing but positive feedback. One in particular um, sent me a thank you note a couple of years ago, thanking me for being hard on him at the time that he didn't understand it and he thought I was being mean. But he
Mm.
sees now that I was doing it for his own good and preparing him for the real world. And this was a guy that really, he would get very upset if I was to, he was immature. He was immature and he wasn't long after high school. And his mother liked to coddle him.
Ugh.
And she, you know, butt heads with me a few times about um, getting on him about certain aspects of his job. But he learned that what I was doing was for his own good. And he matured into that enough to say, thank you for doing it. Thank you for pushing me.
Mhm.
Thank you for challenging me to do my best. And
Mm.
that made me, and his mother and I are still in contact.
That's good.
Yeah. And parents I've had to tell me, like Ben, that's another success story. Ben, I had a hard time at first with his mother, but she came around and realized that she was glad that I pushed her away
Mhm.
because that allowed Ben to grow. And Ben now he was working in as a chef in the country club in their neighborhood.
I mean, that's right in so many ways. Parents need to learn they got to step back because you're interfering in your child's life. Your child needs to grow, regardless of their disability. They need to grow. Otherwise, they're not going to know what to expect how the world's going to treat them unless they experience it for themselves.
That's right. You can't, and it, again, it goes back to that word, fear.
Hmm. And this is what our world is built on, this fair. It's big. You look at the people that lead it and the stuff we've gone through, and it's a our world is just so negative. It needs to change. And I think the autistics are the ones that are going to make the change in the long run. It's because the way we think and the way we see the world, and
Hmm.
people are soon going to learn to start following our lead instead of us following them.
It's a parallel track of thinking.
Hmm.
Who's to say that you don't see the world the way it's supposed to be seen?
Yeah. Now, what challenges have you faced internally or externally while building this kind of an inclusive business?
Probably making people aware that it's here. I
Mm,
mean, I'm talking about now we're talking about the business in a box. Now we're talking about the business model that I'm promoting, that's a playbook or manual for other people to carry out what I did here in Charlotte in their community. So what's the hardest thing is to get the word out, to find my market, because I know who my market is. My market are special education teachers, educators, and people with autism themselves, and families of individuals who have autism. That's my market.
All right. Now, what is next for you and your company?
Next for me is to continue to do podcasts, to continue to be speakers at at events that address that my audience are those types of people.
Hmm.
I am going to be speaking in an event in July in a neighbor in town, and I have big hopes for that. So just I love to talk about Blue Jay and what it's meant for me. It's done a lot for me personally. I've grown. So Blue Jay isn't all about the people without, they've helped me to grow. They've been so gracious to me, Reed, because
Yeah.
like I said, I was undergoing trauma. Sometimes I was a mess, but they were patient with me, they were gracious, and I have a lot of debt I owe them for how they've helped me to grow in this business too. It's been so I just there's no need for someone to start a business like this
Mhm.
without first allowing me the opportunity to tell them some of the ways in which they can save themselves mistakes, learn from my mistakes. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's a tried and proven
Mhm.
successful business model that has been professionally put together by one of my employees who, I told you helped a lot with the bookkeeping and doing blogs, and with our community college and a neighboring university near our town.
Mhm.
And it was all up here in my head, and they helped me to put it down on paper in a package.
That's why, I mean, one of the things people don't realize is we are we're very emotional people. We care about everything because our emotions are on our sleeve. Well, that's why they sensed your feelings and what you're going through, and for what you did for them, they wanted to pay back by showing that they care about you.
And they did, and it showed. Like I said, I prefer to work with them over anybody else.
And finally, where can people find out more about you and Blue Jay?
Well, my website, it's Blue, BLUE, the letter J, cleaningfranchise.com. BlueJCleaningFranchise.com. And it's not a franchise, Read.
Hmm.
That's just in there for marketing purposes. I get no royalties because I believe in small business and entrepreneurship. Once you buy a business in a box, you become that business owner, and I hold your hand through the whole process. And it's very affordable because I know my market, and my market cannot afford, and neither could I, a franchise that's thousands and thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
So I make it a value. And in that package, not only comes cleaning small offices and paper shredding, which is another good idea, are 4 other businesses that can go along with cleaning that you can offer your clients. So it comes with an array of a different type of services that people with autism would fit very nicely. And then they can always find me on Facebook and Instagram, and it's Blue Jay Cleaning Business in a Box. That's what we call it. And the name, I got to say this before we go. Blue now stands for the color of autism awareness. And I didn't know that at the time. Because I came up with the name Blue. And the letter J has to do with my name, Janet. No reference to the bird at all.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles, and that was Janet Schultz, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Janet.
You read. It's my pleasure.
And